Your Honor, we are quite prepared to come tomorrow. But
Sekou, you've been following this with me, and from your legal background, what is playing out right now?
Because from what you can get, the magistrate, the judicial officer has decided that since it's outside time, why don't we come tomorrow?
Right.
Okay, so they're trying to make sure, Mr. Rengo is trying to make sure that instead she's not held in custody overnight. I think they're trying to get, because from what you can get, the magistrate, the judicial officer has decided that since it's outside time, why don't we come tomorrow?
Right.
Okay, so they're trying to make sure, Mr. Rengo is trying to make sure that instead she's not held in custody overnight until tomorrow.
Earlier we thought that it's no concern if it's past 5 p.m.
Yes. The judge until tomorrow.
Earlier we thought that it's no concern if it's past 5 p.m.
Yes. The judicial officer has the discretion to hear it, to extend the time or not. So in this case, he seems to have decided, come back tomorrow, it's after 5. And so the judicial officer has the discretion to hear it, to extend the time or not. So in this case, he seems to have decided, come back tomorrow, it's after 5. And so they're trying to make sure that she does not spend the night in custody.
But then again, earlier you told us that if someone is arrested, then you are presented before court.
So they're trying to make sure that she does not spend the night in custody.
But then again, earlier you told us that if someone is arrested, then you are presented before court and there are no charges or there's no reason, compelling reason to hold you, then you should be released on bail. There's no reason, compelling reason to hold you, then you should be released on bail.
Yes.
It's your right.
Yes, that is true. Bail is a constitutional right. Whatever the charge, you're entitled to it, unless there are compelling reasons for you not to be granted. The presumption is that everybody gets bail unless there's a reason not to.
Right. And I mean, here it seems that the right.
Yes, that is true. Bail is a constitutional right. Whatever the charge, you're entitled to it, unless there are compelling reasons for you not to be granted. The presumption is that everybody gets bail unless there's a reason not to.
Right. And I mean, here it seems that the judicial officer isn't too convinced from what the defense team is, presenting before court, is really trying to plead for her case to be granted bail. So, as you still, had said earlier, it's the discretion, full discretion. The defense team is, presenting before court, is really trying to plead for her case to be granted bail. So, as you still, had said earlier, it's the discretion, full discretion, and he can't be swayed in any way. In terms of what the defense...
I think what he's saying is that, look, why don't you just bring the...
And he can't be swayed in any way.
In terms of what the defense... I think what he's saying is that, look, why don't you just bring this thing, including the bail issue, tomorrow, so that we hear it tomorrow. That's what appears to me to be the case that he's trying to say.
And if that's...
But they're trying to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Because, I mean...
So that we hear it tomorrow. That's what appears to me to be the case that he's trying to say.
And if that's...
But they're trying to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Because, I mean, you'd know the statement this would make, that the DCJ has spent the night in jail. And that in itself is... but, for instance, now if he doesn't, sway and change his mind, you'd know the statement this would make, that the DCJ has spent the night in jail. And that in itself is... but, for instance, now if he doesn't, sway and change his mind about the bail application, then obviously
she would have to spend the night in custody and be brought back to court tomorrow.
Right.
To then take plea.
And then that would be to start, and then the trial proper would start a bit later.
Yes, and possibly the bail will be argued tomorrow if he does not allow them to do that today. The other alternative is that he could hear them today and then reserve ruling, a decision for tomorrow.
Okay.
And then have that.
I mean, someone might think, for an officer such as a DCJ, you'd want to have, as you said earlier, a neat, play out of this.
Yes.
Not in terms of favorable treatment, but just have a neat play out of this case. And this is, you know, would be somewhat messy.
And that's probably the pressure that is going to play out throughout this, because then everybody will be looking and thinking, is the DCJ getting special treatment? Maybe that's what's playing around in the mind and saying, look, if it was everybody else, if it was Asseku who'd been arrested at 5 o'clock and brought to court, he'd have been told, go and just, it's after time,
right?
It's after 5 o'clock, just go back to custody, we'll hear your bail application tomorrow. And then you'd have to live with it. So I get the balancing act that the judicial officer here has to be careful not to be seen to be swayed by virtue of the office of the person appearing before him.
Right. We have the audio back. Let's listen in.
At 1. He stayed at the DCI offices until late in the night when he was taken to Muthaiga police station. He was fished out of Muthaiga this morning, and I was with him from 8 a.m. until now. And therefore, Your Honor, my submission is the fact that he has been brought here at the wee hours, at the late hours of the day, has nothing to do with himself. In everything else, I associate myself with my learned friends.
May it please Your Honor, with tremendous respect to my senior Mr. Rengo and all the advocates, may it go on record that although the first accused person is the deputy DCG and the deputy CJ, and the second accused person is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and an officer of this court, they are appearing here this evening, afternoon, evening, in a different capacity. And that is the capacity of an accused person who has been arrested. And therefore, should the court be minded to grant that application, conditions other than personal bonds would be necessary. And secondly, it should be very clear that those conditions and the bond will only apply up to tomorrow, 9 o'clock. Thank you. Your Honor, we all intended to bring them earlier, but I wouldn't go into what happened, but we all intended to be here early and the charges were registered earlier enough. We would have done it in the morning, but we started this yesterday.
In a way that is disadvantaging the accused persons, which is not right.
Thank you for very much.
the state has brought the accused persons to court way past court working hours, and this in a way prejudices the accused persons even if the court was to grant them both with sureties or conditions. At the moment, the court offices are closed, banks are closed, hence to grant any board with terms at the moment will be akin to denying the accused persons bail. Consequently, the court orders that pending any further proceedings that will continue tomorrow, each accused shall be released on executing a personal bond of Kenya shillings 5 million. They are further ordered to appear before this court tomorrow without fail at 9 a.m. These terms are temporarily to secure their appearance tomorrow, and after tomorrow's proceedings, the court shall, if necessary, impose such further conditions as it shall deem necessary.
Is it possible, now that the office has that the execution of the personal possession?
My court assistants are here, so they will prepare the forms.
The court session is over, and as would have been anticipated, at least what Sekou had earlier said, the most likely scenario is what has played out today, but some back and forth between the defense and the prosecution.
Yes, there is. There's been some back and forth. The prosecution brought them, and they're saying it's late. Of course, the defense are saying, look, if we are to apply for, if you are to leave them and go to trial tomorrow, ask them they'll spend the night in custody. Yes. It's not their fault. And the judicial officer rightly saw through that and said, look, even if I was to give them bond today, under the normal terms, okay, what often happens is that after you're granted bond by a court, it is processed. There's a process of verifying the surety. So like if, for example, I say I'm granted bond of 5 million with a surety of $1 million, and I bring in Mark or somebody, the court has to check, does Mark really have 1 million bob to stand surety? It's not just a question of signing papers. Okay. It's affirming. Now, because it's after 5, that is not possible. And until that is done, you are held in custody. Yes. So what the judicial officer has rightly done, and I'd have to commend him for such grace under pressure, because there's a lot of pressure you can see from this. There's the pressure on those who think, oh, he's going to be lying down to his bosses, his boss in the judiciary as the Chief Justice, and therefore letting her go easy. And those who are also going to be saying, look, he may be trying to show that he's tough by denying them bail, or the prosecution coming to say that he's less than even-handed. He said, okay, let me give them personal bond. Just a personal bond is just the personal one that you give by yourself, so each of them signs for 5 million shillings. Yes. Then until tomorrow, 9 a.m. So then they can go home. Okay? They don't have to be held in custody.
And what will play out 9 a.m. tomorrow?
So tomorrow, they make the substantive bail application. Okay. After the charges are read. So the charges will be read tomorrow in court, then they make the substantive bail application. At which point then, I think the judicial officer will probably review the terms of the bond. He may then require further sureties or something of that kind, because he said at that point I will consider whether further conditions are necessary on their bail applications.
All right, and you've mentioned there, you know, just tomorrow it's just perhaps reviewing, but then there will be the charges read in court. Yes. Those are the charges that then the prosecution team will hand to the defense team. Yes. That will
plus
now,
the evidence.
Plus the evidence that they claim to have on this. Yes. And that perhaps will start the process proper for the trial. And you'd say there's no definite, there's no saying right now when the trial proper would start. Yeah.
Most likely they'll after tomorrow, after they've disposed of the bail application and the plea is taken, the court will then set a date for the hearing. At that point, then they'll have to look at coordinating their diaries. There's a constitutional requirement that criminal trials be as expeditious as possible. Right. There should not be undue delay. So most likely the court will consider its diary and the advocates will consider the diary. If they coincide, then they fix a date. Right. Yes.
And I mean, there's no, I mean, you see the senior counsel, James Orengo, and the lineup of those who are there. There's no reading into the makeup of the team in law. I mean, they come in as lawyers, regardless where you're perceived to be.
A person is entitled to advocates, to be represented by an advocate of his choice. Yes. And our reading of that in law is then that it doesn't have to be one advocate, it can be 100 advocates if you can afford it, or if they are willing to provide the service pro bono.
Right, right. All right. I believe, this, with everything that has played out, and you've said earlier that from what has been given as supposed evidence by the DPP to really go to conviction on this, it's still sketchy. We would really be able to talk about this when we have, in terms of the weight of this case, when we have the charges read out tomorrow.
Yeah, when you read the charges, they'll say the dates between these dates and these dates, she did this and this and this. This is how she... Because they're saying she obtained a security by false pretenses. Then we'll even get to know what is the security. We know it from Imperial Bank on the basis of the statement by the DPP. We'll get to know what is the security that she supposedly obtained by false pretenses, and what exactly did she do it, and what are the dates on which this is done. Yes.
But as is from now, in the terms of the charges that have been stated in perhaps a few words, abuse of office
yes.
and
tax evasion.
That's not specific enough to really say
yes.
how this case will
yes.
play out.
You can't tell it at this point.
All right. Yeah. With that, Seku, as you've said, you commend the judicial officer with the wisdom that he's applied here in deciding to give them personal bond of 5 million shillings. But then they say that from 9 a.m. tomorrow, there will be now a session where they would now hear the bail, application and probably review and then hear the charges read out too. And that's when
I think they'll start tomorrow with the reading of the charges.
Yes.
Then they'll plead to them, guilty or not guilty. After they have, then at that point, bail application is made.
All right. Yes. Thank you very much. And Seku, for your time. Short notice as was, but you've given us some good scenarios to anticipate what would play out from tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., when the charges will be read out, and then they'll plead to whether being guilty or not, and then we'll see how it plays out tomorrow. And this is something that will definitely dominate our news programs at 7 o'clock and at 9 o'clock. But as of now, the accused who arrested the DCJ and the advocate free. They have gone home and will be back to court tomorrow 9 a.m. and we'll definitely be covering all this live and giving you the latest updates on it. For now, we get back to normal programming. We'll be back with the 7 o'clock news. Join us then.
This is NTV.
Today, carry the fiber network with you everywhere and anytime. Yeah.
First time ever from Downy. I don't like my son to smell bad when he's playing. That's why I switched to Downy Concentrate. With only 1/3 of a cap, its new formula boosts freshness, releasing perfume bubbles that burst with every move, giving me better freshness than a detergent on its own, so that my son and I are always ready for celebration.
There's no laundry without Downy.
When a great evil threatens their land, the fate of humanity rests with one man.
I will hunt him down.
Stop him!
I am not the person that you sent to make peace.
Practical training that relates and fits so well in the current world. Egerton University, transforming lives through quality education.
The 29th edition of the Maralal International Camel Derby, Kenya's best known and most prestigious camel race, will be held on 30th of August 2018 to 2nd September 2018 at Yare Camel Club, Maralal, Samburu County.